Packers Nation, this is a big one. What's up, everybody? Victor here, and welcome back to Packers Nation Report. If you're a Green Bay fan, today's news tells you exactly where this franchise is headed right now and in the future. Let's start with the headline that shakes up the entire defense. The Packers have agreed to hire Jonathan Ganon as their new defensive coordinator. That's right, after Jeff Hafley left to become the Dolphins head coach, Matt LaFleur didn't waste time. Green Bay goes out and lands a guy who's been a head coach, who's been a Super Bowl defensive coordinator, and who once ran a unit in Philadelphia that finished top 10 in total defense 2 straight seasons, including second overall in 2022. That year, the Eagles led the NFL in fewest passing yards allowed in sacks, and were top 5 in interceptions. This isn't a gamble. This is an experienced hire. And think about what Ganon is walking into. Micah Parsons, a first-team All-Pro edge rusher, Xavier McKinney, a second-team All-Pro safety, a young, athletic defense that already finished top 12 last season. This is Matt LaFleur saying, "We're not resetting, we're reloading." But here's where it gets even more interesting. While the coordinator hire screams wit now, the Packers also quietly made moves that show how much they care about depth, development, and competition. Green Bay signed 2 great players to futures contracts. One player gives the Packers another big body up front, minus 6'4", 301 pounds, with real NFL experience after appearing in 8 games with Carolina, and another player, former 6th-round pick, Ohio State background, Syracuse breakout year, a developmental QB brought in to push the room behind Jordan Love. No panic moves, no splashy headlines, just classic Packers roster building. So, in today's video, we're breaking down why the Packers decided to choose a new DC, what his scheme means for this defense, why missing out on Jim Leonhardt matters, or maybe doesn't, and how these future signings quietly fit the bigger picture. But before we dive in, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and help us hit our goal of 1,500 subscribers. This channel is growing because of you, and we're just getting started. Alright, Packers Nation, let's break it all down. We've got huge news coming out of Green Bay today. The kind of move that can absolutely shape the future of this defense, and maybe, just maybe, the future of this team as a Super Bowl contender. The Packers have officially agreed to hire Jonathan Ganon as their new defensive coordinator. Yeah, that Jonathan Ganon, former head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, former defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, and now, the 4th defensive coordinator under Matt LaFleur in just 8 seasons. This move comes right after Jeff Hafley bolts to Miami to become the Dolphins head coach, and it raises a lot of questions, but also some really interesting possibilities. So today, we're breaking down why the Packers moved fast, why LaFleur loved Ganon, what this means for the defense, and whether this hire actually brings stability, or more uncertainty. But before we dive in, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and help us push toward our incredible goal of 1,500 subscribers right here on Packers Nation Report. If you bleed green and gold, you're in the right place. Alright, let's get into it. WHY Jonathan Ganon. Context matters. First things first, the Packers didn't stumble into this hire. According to sources, Matt LaFleur moved fast because he had to. Jonathan Ganon was drawing serious interest from both Jim Harbaugh and John Harbaugh for their defensive coordinator openings with the Chargers and the Giants. If Green Bay waited even a little longer, Ganon might have been gone. And there's one quote that really stands out here. A source told ESPN that LaFleur loved the fact that Ganon has sat in the head coach's chair. That matters more than people think. LaFleur isn't just hiring a play caller, he's hiring someone who understands game management, weekly preparation, staff leadership, and the pressure of running an entire locker room. That experience carries weight, especially after back-to-back coordinators who didn't quite stick long-term. Ganon's track record, the good and the bad now. Let's be honest, if you just look at Ganon's record in Arizona, it's ugly. 15-36 over 3 seasons, 3-14 in 2025, and yeah, he got fired. But here's where context matters. Arizona was a rebuild, plain and simple. Roster issues, quarterback instability, limited talent on defense. That situation is nothing like what he's walking into in Green Bay. Because when you go back to his time as Eagles defensive coordinator from 2021 to 2022, the numbers are legit. Top 10 total defense in both seasons, number 2 total defense in 2022. Fewest passing yards allowed in the NFL, 2022 led the league in sacks 202 to tied for 4th in interceptions. That Eagles defense helped get them to the Super Bowl. That's not luck. That's structure, scheme, and player development. How he fits the current Packers defense. And this is where things get really interesting. Packers fans, Ganon is inheriting a defense that already has Micah Parsons. Reigning first-team All-Pro, Xavier McKinney, second-team All-Pro, Safety Young. Athletic corners, speed at linebacker, and a front seven built to attack. Ganon's background is in defensive backs. Just like Hafley, but his scheme is more about disguised coverages, simulated pressure, forcing quarterbacks into mistakes, letting elite pass rushers eat. You put Micah Parsons into a system that thrives on confusion and pressure. That should scare offenses. If Ganon can recreate even 80% of what he did in Philly, this defense has the potential to jump into the top tier of the NFC. The Jim Leonhart situation, what could have been now? Let's talk about the move that didn't happen. The Packers had mutual interest with Jim Leonhart, Wisconsin native, Badgers legend, defensive mind everyone respects. But timing killed it. Leonhart is currently with the Broncos, and because they're playing in the AFC Championship game, the Packers couldn't interview him. The only window was earlier in the playoffs, and at that time, Jeff Hafley hadn't left yet. If Green Bay waited now, they risked losing Ganon entirely, so the Packers chose certainty over waiting. And honestly, I get it. What this means for Matt LaFleur and the future, this will now be LaFleur's 4th defensive coordinator in 8 seasons. That's not ideal, but this hire feels different. Ganon brings NFL credibility, head coaching experience, proven elite defensive results, and a resume that commands respect in the locker room. And don't forget, LaFleur just signed a multi-year contract extension with Gutekunst and Russ Ball expected to follow. This feels like an organizational reset, a move toward stability, a move toward championship expectations. There's also word that LaFleur is still working through another coaching staff change for 2026. So this may not be the last domino to fall. Should Packers fans be excited? I'd say this, cautiously optimistic but intrigued. Ganon isn't a flashy hire. He's not a fan favorite name. But he's experienced, battle-tested, and proven at the coordinator level. And with this roster, this defense has no excuses. Now it's on Jonathan Ganon to prove that Arizona was the outlier, not Philadelphia. And now we've got one of those moves that might not make national headlines, but absolutely matters if you really follow this team. The Packers just signed 2 great players, Kyle McCord, to reserve future contracts. And I know some fans hear that and think, okay, who? But if you understand how Green Bay builds its roster, this is exactly the type of move that tells us what the front office is thinking heading into 2026. So today, we're breaking down who these guys are, why the Packers brought them in, what they could realistically become, and how this fits into the bigger picture of Gutekunst's offseason plan. But real quick, if you love deep Packers coverage that goes beyond just the big names, smash that like button, subscribe, and help us hit our amazing goal of 1,500 subscribers right here on Packers Nation Report. Alright, let's get into it. What is a reserve future contract and why it matters first? Quick context for anyone who's newer to this. A reserve future contract locks a player onto the roster for the upcoming offseason. They don't count against the active roster yet, but they get a full offseason program, get a chance in OTAs and training camp, and get a real opportunity to compete for a roster or practice squad spot. These are low-risk, high-upside moves, and Green Bay has made a living off this strategy for decades. Jaden Crumedy depth with real NFL experience. Let's start with Jaden Crumedy, because this one actually makes a lot of sense. Crumedy was a 6th-round pick in the 2024 NFL Draft and spent the last 2 seasons with the Carolina Panthers, bouncing between the active roster and practice squad. Physically, he fits the Packers mold. 6 FOOT for 301 pounds, interior defensive lineman who can eat space in 8 NFL games. Crumedy put up 15 total tackles for solo tackles, 0. 5 sack, 1 quarterback hit. Now, those numbers aren't eye-popping, but they're respectable for a young rotational interior lineman on a struggling Panthers defense. What I like here is that he's already survived NFL rosters. That tells you something. Green Bay isn't asking him to be Kenny Clark. They're asking him to provide interior depth, compete in camp, and push the bottom of the defensive line room. With the Packers constantly rotating defensive linemen, Krumedy could absolutely carve out a role if he shows consistency and effort. Why this matters for the defensive line? The Packers' defensive line has talent, but also questions. Depth matters over a 17-game season. Interior rotation matters late in games. And injuries happen every single year. Bringing in someone like Krumedy gives the coaching staff another controllable young body to develop, especially important with a new defensive coordinator trying to evaluate every piece of the roster. This is exactly how Green Bay builds competition. Kyle McCord, a low-cost bet at quarterback. Now, let's talk about Kyle McCord, because anytime the Packers add a quarterback, people pay attention. McCord was a 6th-round pick by the Philadelphia Eagles in last year's draft and spent his entire rookie season on the practice squad. That tells us two things. He wasn't ready to play yet, but teams still see something worth developing, and for Green Bay, this is a classic developmental QB move. McCord isn't coming in to challenge Jordan Love. He's coming in to compete for a QB3 role, push the practice squad room, and give the Packers a young arm to evaluate long-term. The Packers have always valued quarterback depth and development, and McCord fits that philosophy perfectly. Why these moves show Gutekunst's thinking. What I love about these signings is what they say about the front office. Brian Gutekunst is adding competition, protecting depth, and giving the coaching staff flexibility. These aren't flashy moves, but championship teams are built on roster margins, not headlines. If even one of these guys becomes a contributor, the move is a win. Don't ignore the small moves, so Packers Nation, don't ignore this. Reserve future contracts are how undrafted guys become starters, how depth becomes reliability, and how smart teams stay competitive year after year. Jaden Krumedy gives you interior defensive depth with real NFL experience. Kyle McCord gives you a developmental quarterback with upside. Low risk, smart football. Very Packers. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button, subscribe, and help us reach 1,500 subscribers right here on Packers Nation Report. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Which signing do you like more? Do you think either of these guys sticks on the 53-man roster? As always, go Pack Go!